In your experience, have you seen AI now percolate into the decision-making process or strategies as well?
The fact that you will still need accountability for a decision, and as an AI platform, no platform is going to take that accountability. It will still need some human intervention to finally take the recommendation of that AI and choose to go with that recommendation.
Hi everyone. Welcome to another show of Echoes After EOD. Today's guest is someone who has shown a classical growth story from execution, strategy to leadership, which is built on strong analytical skills, stakeholder influence, and sharp product mindset. He has solved some of the toughest operational problems at scale, be it the driver churn at Uber to fraud prevention and returns optimization at Meesho. So please welcome the Associate Director of Meesho and an alum of mine, Prayash Adhia, to the podcast. Welcome, Prayash. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So let's dive in, Prayash. And I've seen that you have had stints at both Uber and Meesho, which are two very different yet high growth companies. So if you had to explain your career path to a curious outsider in probably 30 to 45 seconds, so how would you describe your career trajectory for both these companies?
Both the companies had a lot of common themes, one of which was being super data driven. The second thing was being very results oriented. Third one was just getting to work with a lot of smart people and learning something new every day. Soft skill learning, which includes people management, stakeholder management, data insighting, and storytelling. All of those skills do come in handy as and when you grow in the organization. Although the companies seem to be very different in terms of the industries that they operate in, but the working style has been very similar.
That's interesting. And you spent 3 years in Uber, and then post that you also had a couple of years at Meesho. So, what inspired this transition from a ride-hailing platform to e-commerce?
Uber, if you see my journey, my first stint was a marketplace role, managing both supply as well as demand in order to grow the business overall. So you want to make sure that your supply is happy. And by supply, I meant the driver base. And with demand, I mean the rider base. So they are happy with the pricing, they are happy with various experience so that both of them choose Uber over other modes of transport. And then obviously there are a lot of nuances that happen on the demand side as well as on the supply side. So my second stint was in the demand side of things where I really focused on rider life cycle management, kind of bring that same knowledge, skill set, and problem solving on the supply side. So I did that as well. So after a point of time, there's only incremental learning that I could do, whereas I wanted another hockey stick learning curve. So I thought it would be a good chance to switch industry because obviously I learn a lot about a new industry. But also when I had interned at Uber, it was pre-IPO. By the time I joined Uber, it had IPO very soon.
Yeah.
So it would also be very interesting for me to be in a startup that was pre-IPO, moving towards an IPO. And Meesho actually set the bill at the time.
Perfect. And you mentioned that you had like multiple stints at Uber, right? So you went to the supply side, demand side, and things that you had a complete flavor. And then the learnings had become like incremental and not that exponential, so as to say. But like many people have that apprehension of switching to a startup and after having a comfortable environment behind them. And they think that there's a lot of volatility which is involved in going to a startup, be it like how they see their career trajectory or the stability of the job itself. So how did you manage that startup? Though Misho is not that early, but still you had
Yeah.
this flavor over there.
Depending on your risk appetite and your commitments to family and other responsibilities to hustle, spend more time working, like how important work life balance and all of that is for you. Based on these factors, you can actually choose maturity of the startup that you want to go for. Startups who are inching closer IPO or have been in the system long enough, they are fairly stable. A lot of startups who still have that startup culture but are now fairly big and stable. It wasn't that big of a shift for me, I felt. I had seen Misho's growth journey. It seemed that they were doing all the right things that are required for any company to succeed. And when you have that belief in that industry or the company or its leaders, I think it's fine.
Perfect. That makes sense. And since you, in your last answer, you mentioned startup and work life balance in the same line. So, a question was coming to
Yeah.
my mind regarding the 70-hour work week. And that is
Yeah.
a topic which is very prevalent in the media as well. So, what's your perspective working in a startup culture? How do you see that?
One perspective interview of Shark Tank judges, where both Anupam Mittal and Namita Thapar had very interesting insights, which I kind of agreed with both of them. Namita Thapar alluded leadership level, the upside is so much that people wouldn't mind working that long, whereas someone at a more junior level may not have that level of upside. So it's okay because it does come with own bag of mental and physical health problems.
Mhm.
And Anupam Mittal also mentioned this, and I agree with that as well. If you want to become great at something, there is no substitute of for hard work, no matter how smart or lucky you are. If you're ambitious, you wouldn't mind working 70 hours. If you don't put in as many hours, then it's also important for you to set your expectations right. That,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't think there's any one right answer. It is really company to company specific and individual to individual specific.
That makes sense. And you've structured the answer so well, right? From the context to the different perspectives. I think that very well positions that what the mindset of the people is as well. Uh, and when I was going through a profile, Prayash, I saw that you have shifted from more execution and operational based roles to now the strategy making roles, which are more linked to product management, and you are using different products to execute the problem statements for customers. So, how did that shift happen? And how, as young professionals, we can also pivot to such roles rather than just execution or implementation based roles?
So, firstly, execution and implementation roles, having that on ground experience is super important.
Mm.
Without that, if you go for a strategy role, you're bound to make a lot more mistakes to work because you don't know the on ground nuances of it.
Yeah.
Like you'll make some strategy which looks on paper, but you missed out on a lot of on ground challenges, didn't think of tackling. There's an immense amount of learning that you need to bring out of it. When you are doing this execution, you will realize what the challenges are. You are closer to the problem statements. The moment you show this skill is when automatically you will get more and more involved in strategy discussions, and your career trajectory will naturally start going towards strategy and execution.
Perfectly. Well put. So I think like skipping the line is never a good idea. And probably in the early career, it may seem monotonous, but it is very, like, it is indispensable for the longer journey of entering the leadership and strategy.
I would say if you're finding it monotonous,
Hmm.
you're doing something wrong,
Okay.
because very unlikely that there is something different or new not coming up in your daily life. You might think the overall project is similar,
Hmm.
but there are a lot of A, on ground nuances also that you can learn. B, maybe you are not even looking out for new problems or challenges or better ways of doing the same work. And C, even with, if you have the opportunity to be a part of broader forums or just having these all hands meeting, attending them,
Hmm.
there's always something new to learn. So if it is getting monotonous too soon, the problem is probably you. If you spend a good 1.5 years and then the learning becomes incremental, I get that, because then you need to get more exposure and more opportunities to learn something new.
That's a good insight. Even if you have one portfolio, there are many other things to look out for or inducing creativity over there as well, where you are trying to get out of the comfort zone and learn new things for that portfolio as well. And I think it's a great segue to my next question, where in Meesho, you had worked upon one problem statement of reducing the wrong return claim. And that is a big win. We also see so many returns which are happening on a daily basis by customers and finding that, okay, where is the loophole for these kind of returns? So first, I
Yeah.
want to understand how did you start addressing this problem statement, and how did you make sure that this is not affecting the genuine users and it is just the loophole which you're targeting?
My charter was more around supplier experience. Just like users say that they this is not the product that they had ordered, suppliers also say that this is not the right product that they had shipped. The first thing I looked at was who are the stakeholders involved.
Hmm.
One is the supplier themselves. Then there are the third party logistics partners. Then there's Meesho as a platform. Then there are users. I looked at the journey of the shipment from the order placement to the supplier raising a claim, and then how we evaluate those claims. Identify each of the areas where things could go wrong. Then it is about building visibility digitally as well as visually. The moment you are able to identify and attribute, it then becomes very critical on closing the feedback loop. For example, if I find that there has been some problem in one of the 3PL's supply chain in a particular hub or in a particular pin code during the pickup, I will be then able to close the feedback with the 3PLs by either A, firstly flagging, letting them know that this is a problem area they need to fix, helping them investigate it and build that visibility themselves. The main principle remains same. Build visibility and instrumentation, identify and attribute it to the right stakeholder, close the feedback loop. Once you do that, things start falling into place very quickly.
Perfect. Thanks for that answer, Prayash. Now, my next question was regarding the AI and automation revolution which is happening. So we know that AI is inducing into different corporate spaces as well. And for the operational roles, first of all, how we as operations professionals can future proof our skills by leveraging the AI technology. And even in your projects, how have you leveraged AI as of now?
That's a good question. A, understand what are the capabilities that AI can bring to the table. What are the limitations that AI will have in the current state? It could be in terms of their precision, recall, or performance. It could also be a matter of cost. And then it's completely up to you on how you are applying that AI. To give you a very basic example, I
Mhm.
have a lot of people, they are not necessarily from tier 1, tier 2 colleges. Their strength lies in execution and not necessarily communication and English speaking.
Mhm.
But in their growth path, that increasingly becomes important. When I looked at the quality of their emails, I did encourage them that just making sure using GPT or any Gemini or any other AI technology to make sure that your email
Mhm.
is crisp, grammatically correct, and is landing the point that you're trying to make is something that you can do now very easily. And hence, communication and presentation cannot be a barrier to your growth anymore. You
Mhm.
have to make sure. Similarly, let's say if you're trying to solve a particular problem, obviously
Mhm.
you should not expect AI to give you a lot of the solutions. Can lead to some idea or some word that might just click in your mind and you'll be able to build upon it and help you solve the problem.
Definitely, AI induces productivity in whatever you do, be it writing mails or having a very crisp communication. But when
Right.
AI had come earlier, people said that this will be a tool which will just be used for transactional tasks or basically data backed reasoning, where you can just have the analysis, the Excel setup, everything done through AI itself. But in your experience, have you seen AI now percolate into the decision making process or strategies as well? Like, if there are two options which a leader has to take, can we leverage AI to come that, okay, option A is better in terms of this reasoning? Or do you think that AI is still far off from that human element of decision making?
It depends a lot on organization or to organization on how tech savvy they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fact that you will still need accountability for a decision, and as an AI platform, no platform is going to take that accountability. It will still need some human intervention to finally take the recommendation of that AI and choose to go with that recommendation. The more transactional pieces wherein the a cost of error is low, amount of time or money being spent on a human intervention to solve a problem whose reward is very low, those things AI will be useful. In terms of strategy and decision making, as of today, I'm not sure if leaders would be comfortable.
No, that's a very insightful answer, Prayash. And I love the word accountability, which you mentioned in your answer, because ultimately we can't go back to AI and say that, okay, this is the tool which had taken the decision. So ultimately, if a human errs in the decision making process, it's the accountability of that person to make other decisions to counteract the consequences of the wrong decision. That almost brings us to the end of the podcast, Prayash. But I would like to finish this off with a quick rapid fire with you. Okay, I'll just shoot questions and then you can answer. First, most underrated skill in your toolkit.
Problem solving.
One misconception about startups.
A lot of the things I've heard about startups have generally been true, so very difficult to think about a
Hmm.
misconception as such.
No, that's a good answer. So that validates people's assumptions as well. Perfect. A career decision you are glad you have made.
I think every decision that I'm made in my career, I've generally been glad. One thing was very important during my MBA, especially that I made, and it came from experience. During my MBA, I was very clear what I did not want. For example, I knew I did not want a plant role.
Yeah.
I knew I did not want to do management consulting because it has a very skewed work-life balance and it's not something for me.
Perfect. If not this, what would you be doing instead?
Running a podcast.
Okay, I see competition over there. Okay.
No, I think the podcast space still has a lot of room to grow for
One skill you wish you had learned earlier.
people management. As an employee, when you are looking up to your manager, you'll think he's doing this wrong or she's doing that wrong, and this is how I would be. And that's a very idealistic approach. But when you actually get people reporting into you, you'll understand a lot of those constraints.
Perfect. So you have answered all the questions. Thanks for that. And that brings us to the end of the podcast. Again, thanks a lot, Prayash, for taking out the time and giving the answers, which will be helpful to most of us. And really loved hosting you on the podcast, Prayash. Thank you so much.
I had a great time being on this podcast and speaking with you. And I wish you and your podcast series all the very best.
Thank you so much.